Hey, Winston. Bo. Boo! Hi, Bo. He doesn't want to talk to me. Guess who's actually using her camera again? I have not filmed a video with my camera in a really long time. It's been like probably nearly 2 months. Oh my gosh. Hi guys, how's it going? I just wanted to do it like a chill writing update. It's kind of windy outside. The AC fan is being really loud, so this isn't going to be the best quality video ever, and I haven't talked to you guys in a long time. I saw a video that Lynn DeJong posted. If you don't already follow Lynn's videos, what are you doing? Like, she makes some of the most like aesthetic, like calming videos on AuthorTube. Like, I love Lynn's content. So if you don't already follow Lynn, make sure you check out her video. I will link the one that inspired this one. I'm getting a lot of wins. It's giving windswept. It's giving 2000s photo shoot. She did a writing update that I really liked, and it inspired me to make this one, and I finally am sitting down to film it. So I've been doing a lot of writing since I have been gone. That's what I've been focusing on, which has been good in some cases, bad in some cases. I went through probably the worst imposter syndrome and am realizing now that I still do feel like a bit of an imposter, and I'm having to face like insecurity that I thought I had like gotten over, and I realize now that I didn't, and I was like, oh no. So there has been like a lot going on in terms of like the writing front. Do you like my necklace, by the way? It says Harrison on it. Can you tell? I don't know. I made it with my sister, and I wanted to show you. So it's been like really quite an interesting last 2 months, because I was filming those like webcam videos on like in May, and I haven't really done anything in June to talk about writing. So let's talk about writing, and I'm gonna try to keep this concise. So let's talk about the first thing that I have been writing recently, and that is actually poetry. Now, a lot of you guys may not know this about me because I talk mostly about fiction on here, but I am a poet. I have been writing poetry since I started my degree. I wasn't a poet before I got my degree. I specialized in poetry and fiction when I was getting my degree. And so I haven't written a poem since my workshop. Now, I had to write 8 poems for my workshop, but I haven't written anything since. And I honestly didn't think I was going to, but my department had been giving away a whole bunch of books. And so I brought a whole bunch of them back home with me when I moved. I was kind of in a bit of a rereading spell. Like, I was like really feeling poetry. And I love poetry. Poetry is my favorite thing to read. If you have a poetry collection, like you've written one, link it in the comments. I'd love to buy it and read it. Or if you have like a favorite, let me know, because poetry is my favorite type of book to read. I like to read poetry collections in like a sitting. Like, I just read them really fast. So I went through like 3, I think, in a night, and then the next day I read another one, and it just got me in the poetry mood. I was like, okay, I gotta write some poems. I was like, let me write a chapbook. And it was like this split-second decision. To be honest, I was procrastinating finishing my book Body Back, which I did finish. We'll talk about it. You can check out the timestamps if you want to jump around, but I will talk about that in a second. So I was procrastinating Body Back, so I was like, let me write a chapbook instead. And I did, and I have 2 copies of it here. It's called When He Goes, He Is Gone. And y'all are going to be really interested about this if you're invested in the characters that I write about, because this is, again, another project that follows the exact same characters that I've been writing with for years and years. It is a micro poetry chapbook, and it is all told in second person, and is basically the poem version of my novel Mothwork. So I wrote a novel from 2019 to 2020 called Mothwork. I will read a summary in a second, but I love that book. It is also the like mother project of the 2 other projects that I've been working on related to it. So Mothwork is the first book. Then the novella that I just finished is called Body Back. That is like Mothwork 1.5. Like, that's the book that comes right after. And then Feeding Habits, which I wrote from 2020 to 2022, which is the second book of the series. It's a duology. And all of these books come from a giant series that's called Fostered. If you haven't already seen the 50-minute Fostered video, go watch that, because that will explain the series. Yeah, so that's what When He Goes, He Is Gone is. It's really exciting to have adapted my writing into poetry. I've never done that before. Now, I've done like a couple of scenes, like a scene or 2 of my writing in like screenplay format, for example, but I've never written poems in the point of view of my characters. That's mostly because I don't write poems that aren't about me. All my poems are very personal, except like for some of like the very early poems that I was writing. But now that I'm very comfortable in poetry, I only really ever write about myself. I write a lot about identity and diaspora, but I haven't written in the perspective of a character, and I certainly haven't written in the perspective of Harrison, who is the narrator of Mothwork. He's the main character. You guys probably already know a lot about Harrison. Apparently, I think I've created a little bit of a following, like a cult of Harrison fans. So if you like Harrison, you know, congregate in the comments, let me know. So he also narrates these poems. So it was a lot of fun actually to write in his point of view, but in a poetic voice, because obviously I have my prose writing style. I write prose a lot, but I also know my way around poetry, and both of those things inform each other. I thought it was really cool because I'd never done this before with Harrison. I've been writing with him since 2014, and I'd never written a poem in his head. So I think, you know, that was really cool for me to like adapt a character's voice into a different style, but you know, it's still adjacent because it's the same character. So I want to show you the physical copies. I made these. So if you were here, let me know, because if you were here, you were like an OG. But I wrote my first chapbook. I think it was 8 poems. It was just a thing for fun. It was the first poems I'd ever written. Like, I didn't call myself a poet back then because like this was like the first poems I've written. I think it was called Talk Therapy for Ghosts, Talk Therapy for Apparitions. Girl, I don't remember. There's a video where I'm talking about the chapbook. I wrote it in 2019, and this was before I went to school for poetry. I actually thought I was gonna study or major in screenplay. I didn't actually think I was gonna study poetry, so this was just something I was having fun with. And I'd written these 8 poems over the course of like 2 days, kind of similar to how this thing came along. And so I had the experience like making the actual physical chapbook. So I kind of knew how to do it already. I do have a video, I think, where I was making the physical copies for myself. So I will see if I can find that vlog. I don't know. So this picture, which I can't really hold the microphone and show you, maybe I can do one of these. It's like a full spread book cover. And so this is the front. This is a picture I took on film when I was like in the car or whatever. And that's the back. The front. My name is like falling off, I just realized. And it's really cute. I did like gold edges just because there wasn't like my printer can't do full bleed. So I was just like, let me do something fun on the edges. It kind of looks like a kid's like art project, but that's like cool because I think me from 15 years from now is going to be like really enamored by like what I did here. But I also wanted to design, this was like the first edition. I wanted to design like an actual cover for it because if you didn't know, like I love design and I design book covers. I have a whole playlist designing book covers. So I designed an actual cover. So of course it's called When He Goes, He Is Gone. And this again is like a spread. This is a stock image I found that I kind of edited to just be like black and white, but this is kind of like a mock version. I actually want to do it inverted. I want like the sky to be black, but I don't want to waste that much printer ink, so I'm just gonna paint it myself. Like I have ink, so I think I'll just do it myself, but I'm like really lazy to do that right now. So I thought, let me just do one with the white design because it's very easy to just invert this in Photoshop. The back looks friggin' amazing. I will say that. It looks like an album cover, I would say. It looks super cool. And it just has the titles. Like I just decided to put the titles on the back. Let's read the summary of Mothwork because I forgot that, you know, I was supposed to do that. So this is the summary. This is basically the plot of this because it's the plot of the novel. The cabin isn't haunted, but a dead man owns it, and they know which one. It's late August in the dense Oregon wilderness, and 21-year-olds Harrison and Lonan aren't friends. While isolated at a cabin whose mysterious history leads back to the property's owner, Lonan's father, both men bury its secrets to serious consequences. Battling an addiction against prescription sleeping pills, Lonan is convinced he's being haunted by the ghost of his father. Alone, Harrison struggles to support him despite his best attempts. Their future is on a downward spiral, and they're both losing control fast. That is, until an attempt to destroy a dark room close by in the woods leads them to discover a photograph of a woman with a complicated connection to Lonan's father. Driven by his paranoia and in desperate need to rid himself of his father's ghost, Lonan convinces Harrison to help him find her. But when Harrison begins feeling the pressure of Lonan's precarious mental health and the woman's presence threatens to unravel their faux normalcy, both men are forced to confront their past, the unknown woman, and most secretive of all, the nature of their relationship. If it's not clear, they are kind of dating. They're like not boyfriends. So the chapbook I wrote in less than 72 hours. So it was like really fast. It was a lot of fun. I wrote most of the poems I think, in one day. Like I ordered this like particularly for the plot, so I'll kind of talk about it so it isn't just like random order. So the first poem is When He Goes He Is Gone. So this is actually the end. Like I started with the end. So the actual plot of this poem is, it's kind of just like a reflection, and it spoils the ending of Mothwork. And Mothwork's not a book I'm trying to publish, and I've already spoiled the ending a million times. They break up, basically. Like the not boyfriends have their not break. We actually kind of get that spoiled, like the ending of that poem spoils how the rest of the chapbook will go. But I thought it was relevant because, I mean, the entire thing is a breakup story. So I was like, why not start with the end? Like, we know Harrison's gonna leave, who's the narrator. And like I said, these poems are written in second person. I originally had one idea to write a poem in first person, but I was like, no, I can't. First person Harrison, nah. So I wrote this poem, I think the draft on my phone, actually, which is great. Notes app poetry is iconic. Second poem is A Storm on the I-80, and this is actually an adaptation of a particular scene in Mothwork, I think in chapter 3, which is called Optical Illusion. I also wrote this on my phone, but I love Mothwork so much in terms of like the road trip vibes. Like a really big part of Mothwork is driving, and a big Lonan and Harrison aesthetic to me is driving and like in the middle of the night, and the roads are isolated and things like that. It's something that I think about a lot about them, and so I really wanted to write a poem that captured that aesthetic, especially of this book, because this book, I mean, I'll pop up the cover of it. Like, as you can see, it's like very like nighttime aesthetic. It's supposed to be that way. And I love this poem. I think this one turned out really good. Then the next poem I wrote is It's You and Him in Gauzy August and You're Sure This Is Love. I love me a long poem title. And this one's actually really fun because it's half of a golden shovel. So I love to educate my audience on things they probably don't know about, because most of you probably don't write poetry, because I feel like most people on the internet that I interact with don't write poetry, but if you do, like, you're probably going to be excited about this. Now, golden shovel is a form that I learned about when I took a class on poetry, and so credit there, because I didn't know about this before. A golden shovel was created by Terrence Hayes. It's quite a contemporary form of poetry, where essentially you take either like a full poem if it's short, or you could do a whole one, but I feel like that would be really hard. Part of a poem or a poem, and you use that. Like, let's say you took a line, you use that line as the last word of every single line in your poem. I will link Terrence Hayes' actual golden shovel because I think the poem is actually called Golden Shovel, and you'll see what he does with somebody else's work to honor that writing. So I was on Tumblr, tumblr.com. As I do, and I saw this quote from an Ocean Vuong poem, and I believe this is from his collection Night Sky with Exit Wounds, I think so, and the poem is called Because It's Summer. I read that collection. People are gonna crucify me, but I didn't really like that collection very much. I'm so sorry. But I will say, the Ocean Vuong poems that I do like that I love, like they end up in like my top 10 poems of all time, like Toy Boat, the Amazon poem from Time as a Mother. I saw this quote from Because It's Summer, and I do recommend the collections either way. Like it's just my preference, but I recommend that people read them. I think that Ocean Vuong is very talented. But the line from that poem that was on tumblr.com was, "It's June after all, and you're young until September." And I was like, no way. Because I couldn't stop like thinking about how Mothwork that was. Now, Mothwork doesn't take place in June. It takes place in August, but still the summer like aspect was there. And then You're Young Until September, Body Back, takes place in September, and Body Back is the story of Harrison and his breakup and him kind of losing like a really important part of himself. It's almost like he lost his youth in September. So I was like, oh my god, this is so awesome. This thing kept happening to me when I was reading poems. Now, sometimes I'll like take pictures of parts of poems I like or whole poems that I like so I can remember them and put them on a list. There is this writer named Richie Hoffman, who we'll talk about later, because Richie Hoffman's poetry has like a grip on me. I was rereading some of his poems, and I was like, why couldn't I have written that? I wish I had written this. And then it took me like months, because I read that collection like in March. It took me months to remember, Rachel, this is poetry. You can write it. And that's one thing about poetry as an art form that I love more than fiction, because there is a culture, there's a community, and I'm sure maybe there's like, I don't know if there's a community of this like outside of the West, but at least to my knowledge, like in Western writing, like fiction writing is often like really quite like in the West, solitary. Like most people do it by themselves. I think I'm starting to see more people be a bit more collaborative, but in poetry, there's like, that's a part of it. The poetry is, a part of it is being in community and in conversation with other poets, which I love so much. So I was like, if I wanted to write this line, you know, it's June after all and you're young until September, I can. There's even an entire form called the cento, which is entirely using other people's poetry to write a new poem. So, I mean, and that's just like a simplification of the form, but this was one of the last ones I wrote, I think. This was the last one I wrote, I think. Anyways, now most of the poem is not a golden shovel. It's about half of it is a golden shovel. So I have like one stanza, like let me actually find it so I don't just talk out of my ass and like screw up what I'm saying. So yes, the first stanza is not a golden shovel. So it doesn't have like the line on like the side, but I started, like I kind of injected a golden shovel in the middle of this poem. The second stanza, there's 3 stanzas. The second stanza is the golden shovel. It actually starts at the last line of the first stanza and then goes into the second stanza. I really liked being able to honor that poem because I love that poem. I'll link it. I think it's like, it's kind of floating around on the internet, so I will share it if you want to read it. Next poem I wrote was In the Mornings He Finds Your Face and for a Moment Considers Calling You an Angel. Now, this is a really fun one because it was unexpected. It was like, you know, that meme was like, Ariana, like, what are you doing here? You know, I'm sorry, like, I might have just like outed myself as like old Gen Z on that one. So if you're like younger than me and you're laughing at me, just, it's fine. It's okay. The reason I feel that way is because this is actually a Lonan poem. This poem is told in the perspective of Lonan Clark himself. He came out of the woodwork and decided to have a point of view in the Mothwork chapbook, which makes a lot of sense because that's exactly what happened in Mothwork. He also came out of the woodwork and decided to have a point of view in Mothwork. So I was like, oh, typical. Originally, when I wrote this title, it was about Harrison. Like I was going to write it in Harrison's point of view. And then it just ended up being about Lonan. And this one is about internalized homophobia. It's about struggling with your sexuality. It's about contending with identity. It's about fatherhood. It's about, you know, struggling in your own sonhood and stuff like that. And I'm really happy that I ended up writing this one because it wasn't supposed to be in here because it was just supposed to be a Harrison point of view chapbook. But it also makes a lot of sense because Mothwork isn't just Harrison's point of view. It was also about Lonan too. So it was great to actually see him there. I was like, oh, what are you doing here? I thought that one was really sweet because I'm going to write a novella called Hallowed Bodies, which I'll talk about. And it's going to be in his point of view, and he's going to also be contending with these things. So it was kind of nice to see him kind of just for a second, because I haven't written with Lonan in Lonan's point of view, oh gosh, since 2021. The last poem in the collection is called Genesis. So Genesis is the glossa or however you pronounce it. I'm very sorry. And I love this form. I'm going to say glossa. Now, this is a glossa after Richie Hoffman's Museum. Now, this is a really good poem from his collection. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name. I'm terrible considering I really like many of the poems from this collection. So his collection is called 100 Lovers. I really recommend this one. You know what? I was a bit on the fence. I think when I read it, I wasn't sure if I really liked it. And then funnily, I was going through, you know, my phone and I had written down a whole bunch of these poems. So clearly I really like this collection. So I do recommend, I think especially if you're looking for queer poetry, if you're looking to read poetry that is also like accessible, but still in a really interesting style, I would recommend it. It's not difficult to read or anything. Like I know sometimes like if you're new to poetry, you can be like, what the fuck does this even mean? I think this one's an accessible one especially if you're looking for queer poetry. Anyways, so I love a Richie Hoffman poem called Museum. It's like one of my all-time favorite poems, and the reason I love it so much is because it reads like Mothwork. I don't know if it's actually published anywhere online. I would love if it was so I could share it, but obviously I don't want to like reshare or reprint it or anything without permission of the author. Hey, y'all are lucky. I will link the tweet where he posted the poem, because this is a great poem, and ever since I read it, I'm like, this reads like Mothwork. I don't know what the intention was like from the author himself, and you know, I'm just kind of projecting how I feel about the poem onto it. I was floored the first time I read this poem because I was like, it reads so much. Like there's this line, actually I will read them, the lines that I ended up taking for the glossa. Let me just read them for you. There's a couple lines in that poem. They go as follows. I worry our hearts are growing cold. At the far end of the room, Mercury is a boy already. I will abandon you. I will come back. So check out the poem so you can read the full thing and support this author because I love this poem so much. This one is the one that really inspired me to write this because I was like, I have to I have to write this poem. And the minute I realized I can write the poem is when I was like, great, I'm going to write this chapbook. So I was really happy that I could kind of honor this author because, you know, Richie Hoffman also has some other poems that I really like that also feel like really relevant to and in conversation with my writing. So I loved that. And if you get the collection itself, the copy I have is a hardcover and it's friggin' gorgeous. I've never seen a hardcover poetry book that was like this small. So it's like a really slim hardcover. And the poem titles are written in purple ink. Like, I've never seen that in a book before, like colored ink, and it's gorgeous. Now, this gloss is really important to me, I think, because I love this form. I've written one glossa before, but I've loved this form for a while. I think it's like really impressive, and I love kind of seeing how people take parts of other people's words. I didn't even explain what a glossa is for those who don't know. You're going to take 4 lines, I believe. So the lines that I just read, let me get them again. You would take, I worry our hearts are growing cold at the far end of the room. Mercury's a boy already. I will abandon you. I will come back. So that first line is, I worry our hearts are growing cold. 2 is at the far end of the room. 3 is Mercury is a boy already. And then 4, I will abandon you. I will come back. And each of those lines becomes the last line of a 10-line stanza. If you don't know what a stanza is, I've just been saying stanza. A stanza is like a paragraph, basically, in poetry. In a glossa, those lines that you pick in order. So I worry our hearts are growing cold is the final line of stanza 1. At the far end of the room is the final line of stanza 2. And, you know, you can like kind of break the rules in poetry, so you don't have to. I don't think I fit the form exactly. The first time I wrote a glossa, I did, besides the rhyme. I don't think anybody really does the rhyme anyway, but I didn't do the rhyme. I don't rhyme. But you can kind of just tweak. There's no rules in poetry. Nobody cares. So I think I had, I don't know, like 11 or 12 lines in some of the stanzas. I think one of them was exactly 10 lines. So I love this poem. It's called Genesis, but I love that it's at the end. I think that says a lot thematically. I put it there on purpose. Now the last line, of course, because it's because of the Richie Hoffman poem, the last line is, I will abandon you, I will come back. And I want to talk about that line. I didn't write it, obviously, but it always felt so Harrison and Lonan. Like, I will abandon you, I will come back is exactly what happens in that book. Harrison leaves Lonan, and he doesn't really tell him he's leaving. He's like, hey, you want me to get something? I'm going to the corner store for cigarettes. And Lonan's like, gum, please. But Lonan is kind of aware when he says that Harrison's not coming back with his gum. Like, bitch, get your own. Okay, get your own 5, get your own juicy fruit. I ain't give you shit. Anyway, that's not what he says. But Harrison knows he's not coming back. Lonan knows. So Harrison kind of, in a way, abandons Lonan. But I love the I will come back because it feels like them. That's so them. It's always been the kind of the crux of their relationship. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that's how their relationship has been. I think it's how Harrison feels. So I was really happy that I was able to actually write a Harrison poem and capture that feeling, you know, and use somebody else's words to sort of honor that poet's words, but also, you know, to also still capture how Harrison feels. So that's When He Goes, He Is Gone. Yeah, this was supposed to be a short video. That's really funny, Rachel. I'm going to be here for an hour. So let's talk about art. I don't really talk about art on my channel anymore, but I think I got a lot of, like, my original kind of subscribers and everything. Like, the first 100 people were probably really used to seeing my art. So I want to talk about it. I drew Jeremiah from Body Back. I think I showed him in a video, but if you missed that one, this is Jeremiah. He's really cute. I don't know why Harrison has such a bad taste, because I don't know why he would leave Jeremiah. And he's also really nice. He's like the perfect man, which is the exact reason why Harrison goes. Whatever makes you happy, boo. So he's really cute. Thank you, Jeremiah, for your service. It was wonderful. Let's talk about Jeremiah for a second. His nickname is JJ, so I'm assuming his last name also starts with a J. I don't have a last name for him, so if you guys want to come up with a last name for Jeremiah, just drop one in the comments and I'll pick one that I like if you see this and you would like to participate. Jeremiah is really sweet. I originally created him in 2019 when I was writing this book. He shows up in a couple of scenes in Mothwork. I have a video where you can read a scene with Jeremiah. And he's a really nice guy. He is like really supportive, but he's also a good friend. I think that's what's first and foremost. Like, him and Harrison aren't like officially anything in Body Back. They're not like dating, but they're seeing each other. But Jeremiah is also just like a friend also. Like, first and foremost, he's just a friend. He's a really good friend. Harrison takes that for granted. But he was just so lovely to get to know. I think it's one of the best things about writing Body Back that I really haven't talked about. I talk about Harrison and 24 karat Harrison and the cowboy hat and the fur jacket and him being chaotic, but I don't often or as often talk about what it was like to get to know Jeremiah as a person. Frame just changed a whole bunch because I went to go talk to my friends and then I got distracted and I went on a walk. So I'm back to finish this video. We were talking about Jeremiah and that Jeremiah was a pleasure to get to know. I don't often create new characters that I can really like invest in all that much because I'm really like caught up in and like obsessed with the characters from Fostered and like the core cast. And it's just been that way for a number of years. Like, I don't write with many other characters except for, like, the core. It was really the core 3, and then Foster came back into relevance, and so did Darren, so, like, kind of the core 5. So, with that said, it feels really nice to, like, have been able to get to know somebody else that, like, I didn't know. Like, Jeremiah, I didn't know well at all. Like, he was just kind of a character that appeared in passing, and I kind of knew his archetype as somebody who was like relatively confident and really secure in himself and really kind, understanding, a compassionate person, because we see him a little bit in Mothwork. I mean, he was the first new character I created in a really long time. I remember the first time I wrote Jeremiah, I was in the US. I was visiting family in the US, and I have a writing vlog actually of me writing during that trip. If you were there, you might have remembered. It's still on my channel. When I went on vacation and I was doing a writing sprint, and I had written with Jeremiah at that point. I think he was just kind of like a split second kind of decision character that came to me during this writing sprint, and it just feels nice that I was able to get to know somebody because I didn't really get to know him all that well in Mothwork, and obviously we're still in Harrison's point of view in Body Back, so we don't get to really hear his thoughts, but we get to see him more as a person. We get to see that him being nice to Harrison wasn't just like a one-off thing. That's like who he is, and that he deeply cares for people, and at the end of the book is deeply hurt also, despite still deeply caring, because obviously Harrison becomes a disaster at the end of Body Back, which we're going to talk about in a second. So Jeremiah love for the video. I also wanted to show you this pride drawing that I did of the core characters. I was just talking about them, actually, the core characters. It's Reeve, Lonan, Harrison, Foster, and Darren are like the core Foster characters. I've just been writing with them for a long time. I haven't really created new characters, like, besides for my short stories, like, since then. Like, these are the characters that I've just been focused on for the last nearly 10 years, which is crazy. But I drew them, and I haven't done a cast drawing myself, like a full-fledged cast drawing. So this is the normal version of what they would look like, relatively speaking, in 7th Virtue. Now, the sketches of Reeve, Lonan, and Harrison were based off of a drawing that I had started in 2021, back when 7th Virtue was like a newer project to me. And so I thankfully had those drawings already, so I didn't really have to do much besides kind of clean them up and then color them in, obviously. So then I did Foster, which is based off of a drawing I did of Foster in my sketchbook years ago, probably in 2021 too. And then in December, I like lined it and everything, but I didn't really know how to use Procreate all that well or how to digitally draw. It's actually taken me years to figure out how to actually like do flat shading. And I finally found a style. Like, it has, oh God, I've been drawing since 2016 digitally, I think. It took that long. Anyways, so I did Foster, and then I did Darren. Darren isn't perfect, mostly because Darren is like a god of a man, and he's like really hard to like nail. Just this drawing that my sister did is the best Darren drawing ever. This is exactly what Darren looks like. I didn't really nail it as much. I still think he looks pretty good, but he looks more like his brother. Darren has a brother named Matthew who will show up later. Matthew looks a lot more like the drawing. Like, it looks like Matthew when Matthew's like 22 or something, you know. I also did a pride version and I don't think I've done Darren. By the point that you see this video, I don't think I actually added Darren. I was gonna do some like ally stuff for Darren because Darren isn't queer. At least for now. You never know with me and my characters. I haven't done it yet, but I'll show you the finished one. I'll upload the speed paint at one point when I finish it, but this is the rest of them, and they all look really fun, I think. Harrison and Reeve, the backstory is that they definitely coordinated. Like, Reeve was like, okay, I'm gonna do your makeup. You can tell, like, if you saw the 24 karat Harrison drawing, like, which is here, you can tell his makeup is much worse. In the fried version, you can tell that Reeve was like, okay, not you. You don't do your own makeup because you're a disaster. I'm going to do it for you. And you can tell that's why it looks really good with his, like, rainbow eyeshadow. He looks really good. So I had a lot of fun doing that because Harrison is just that type of person. Like, I think he would just have a lot of fun. Come Pride, same with Reeve, and then Lonan has his little pin, and then his. My backstory is that they were bullying him and were refusing. Like, you have to do something. You have to do some fun, like, face paint. So I'm imagining that Reeve did a small little bi flag on his face, and then Foster is, like, very distinguished because that's just how he is. So he has his distinguished little pins, and him and Harrison have matching necklaces that say BFF, and they are the gay pride flag. Those are little details. I'll talk about it more in the speed paint. I just wanted to show you. Let's talk about Body Back, because holy crap, this video is already long, and Body Back is the main thing I was supposed to talk about. So Body Back is a novella that I have been writing for forever. So I started it on February 23rd of this year, of 2023, and it still feels like February 2023 to me, but also, you know, obviously it's not February at all. Winston, please don't start barking. That was Winston involuntary barking. This was my primary project after I finished Seventh Virtue. This became the project that I was writing, and it wasn't supposed to take me that long, and I was really kind of quite disappointed that it took me this long. Like, and it's stupid because it didn't take me long. Like, it's a longer project. It's almost 30,000 words. So over 4 months, like, and that wasn't like writing every single day. There was time when I took like about a week and a half to 2 weeks. That happened like twice in between drafting, which is like really good that I managed to write it so consistently. But I think part of me was upset by like how slow it went because my life changed so much, like in the middle of writing this project. And I don't know if other autistic people who are writers watching this feel the same way, but for me, like, it felt nice to have like a project that was like wrapping a part of my life up, and then to have not finished it by the time I moved back home, because I moved back home really unexpectedly. It kind of threw me off, and it threw off the project, and then I had this like immense insecurity and like imposter syndrome, and I made tons of videos about it. And I kind of tainted the project a little bit. And this is kind of what happened with Feeding Habits, to be honest. Like, Feeding Habits, which is the book that comes after Body Back, but I wrote it before. I also had this sort of thing where, like, I had a good start, and then, like, it kind of crumbled and fizzled out. And Body Back did not fizzle. Like, I won't go so far to say that. It actually was a great process. I didn't enjoy writing chapter 4, most of chapter 4 as much as I enjoyed writing chapter 3, for example, and I didn't enjoy writing chapter 5 at all, really. There were moments in chapter 4 that I did like. Chapter 4 is called No Christ, and there was like a moment with Jeremiah, like when it started working, I really did enjoy writing it. But then chapter 5, which is Harry's son, I struggled kind of throughout the whole thing, and I don't really like ending off books when I'm struggling, but I found like the last two or three books that I've written, I haven't really ended it on like a really satisfying note. It could be because I had the ending planned ahead. For a lot of my books, I don't know what the ending's going to be. For Mothwork, I had no idea what the ending was going to be. For Feeding Habits, I don't know if I necessarily had an idea, but I had like sort of the end plotted out. Seventh Virtue, I did have the ending planned out and stuff like that. So maybe it could be because I had planned the ending. It just didn't feel satisfying because I already knew it was coming, which to other people might sound like, what? Like, wouldn't that be more satisfying? But for me, it's just weird. I don't know. But yeah, Body Back ended up being about 28,000 words. It's 5 chapters. First chapter is Living Pictures. Second one is Immaculate Mary. Third one is 24 Karat Harrison. Fourth one is No Christ. Fifth one is Harry's son. I have a video talking about the entire project. It's pretty much the same. I will make an all about my novel video if you want to leave your questions about the project already. Like, I'll put out a separate call, but if you want to leave those in this comment section, you can do that too, and I will write them down for later. Yeah, it does feel really crazy that it took me so long. It just feels like I went through a lot of seasons, because I started this project like dark place. Wasn't doing well. And then I really found my independence, and I think I found myself and did like a lot of soul searching, like unrelated to writing, but just like personally speaking, when I was writing this project, because writing this project got me out of the house for the first time in a long time. It got me doing things by myself for the first time in a long time. And by a long time, I mean ever. So I did a lot of personal development. So it feels weird that the draft is done and that, you know, so close. I finished 2 books. So obviously Seventh Virtue, I finished that one in February as well, like right before I started this one. But that one was 200,000 words, so it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, it's over now. But like, it's weird that like a couple months later, I've done another book, and it's not a novel length book; it's a novella. But still, it's quite substantial. I'm not sure how I feel about the final product. I don't really like. Sorry, final product. It sounds so like capitalist to say that way. But the final work, I'm not sure that I'm like 100% on it. But again, I think a lot of it, if I had been in school and if I had been going to the library and getting Starbucks or like whatever, I was getting like also like gumballs and like Red Bulls like at one point to like draft this book, if I was still doing that and the book had just remained the same, but I had written it there, I think I would feel a lot more satisfied with it. It's not that I don't feel satisfied having finished it at home. I just think there was an arc to Body Back, like emotionally speaking, in terms of the writing process. I don't know if this is relatable to anybody else, but there was an arc to it that wasn't complete for me, because in a sense, if I had finished it in my university town, I think I would have felt like, and I can't project, obviously, I don't think it's even productive to project, but I wonder if I would have felt more like, yeah, that's like, I feel satisfied with this because I've finished what I started here, you know, but I didn't finish what I started here because I moved back home and I feel like I left a lot of me back at university and a lot of what I had found. And I'm still rebuilding that because, you know, I'm adjusting. So having a project kind of come smack in the middle of an adjustment period is a little bit tricky. I wonder if that's the same thing that happened with Feeding Habits. I don't know, because Feeding Habits, I also had this kind of disjointed life circumstance that impacted the writing process. Why don't we read some Body Back? I have a couple of excerpts. The first one is like a little romantical. I don't like writing romance. I find writing romance extremely, really uncomfortable. Like, I can't handle it. It doesn't matter how cute it is. It doesn't matter like how much like I want it to happen. Like obviously Lonan and Harrison like are a couple in my mind, and I love them being in a partnership, in a relationship with each other. But I hate writing the romance. And this isn't about Lonan and Harrison. This is about Jeremiah and Harrison, which is even better. They're like suave. They're a very romantic couple. But I can't do it. Here's some romance because we should make an attempt, maybe. The sound of Jeremiah shifting on the other side leaks through the door. What had he planned to do this September before Harrison turned up at his apartment? On their first night reunited, they'd sip mimosas while swapping Jeremiah's BlackBerry back and forth to play Brick Breaker, watch Psycho, and only kissed at the ending credits. Jeremiah hadn't even questioned why Harrison had turned up because he's a good guy, a good friend. He knows Harrison could eat cinnamon on anything, that he'd gargle with black coffee if he could, that symbols make his teeth ache, that he can't tolerate the smell of chocolate anymore. Good guy, good friend. In another life, they could have grown up together, played road hockey in humid Augusts, shared a half and half ice cream cone, fallen for each other delicately. In another life, Harrison would have told Jeremiah he loved him and meant it. He could admit all of this right now. Some people want to be appreciated, taken by the shoulders, looked at right in the eyes. Guess who doesn't admit any of that? Because Harrison has like an anti-character arc. I realize that about him. Lonan has like a positive character arc because in Mothwork he sucks as a person, and then in Feeding Habits he's a much better person. And Hallowed Bodies, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this video, is his arc of how the hell did he become a better person. And then Harrison undergoes like a negative character arc where in Mothwork he's like a really good person. He's trying his best, and then by the time we get to Body Back, you can't really necessarily say he's a good person. He's starting to go down, and like by the end of he's making bad decisions. He breaks Jeremiah's heart. He does some really terrible things. In Body Back, by the time we get to Feeding Habits, he's a terrible person. It's not disputable. And you can also see he's also a hurt person, so I don't want to equate those two things, but a big part of how Harrison deals with feeling hurt is being destructive to other people, and that that's not very cool of him. Yeah, I didn't really realize that that was the canon, because technically Body Back is the last thing in canon that I will write in Harrison's point of view. Seventh Virtue is different. Seventh Virtue Harrison is completely different. Like, he's like old Harrison. Like, if dystopian Harrison still existed now, that would be Seventh Virtue Harrison. But Harrison, who underwent like really complicated like psychological torment, doesn't exist in Seventh Virtue, because it just doesn't really make sense for that book. So I guess I ended off his canon character arc on a negative note. Sorry, baby. Okay, next one. This is also some more romance, but it's just kind of like, it's touristy, it's kind of cute. So this is about, what if Harrison does this a lot. This is from chapter 4 in Oh Christ, where he thinks about what his future could be like with Jeremiah, because I think at the end of the day he realizes like it's just not right for him. In Feeding Habits, we get this line, I don't know what the exact line is. Oh, I gotta find it now, because it's extremely how Harrison feels. But remember that Feeding Habits comes after Body Back. Now, when I wrote it, I didn't know that when I wrote Feeding Habits, I didn't know I was gonna write Body Back, but now I have all the knowledge of Feeding Habits, so I was able to basically put in a line, basically write what this line was in Feeding Habits. You're going to understand when I read it to you. So there's a giant sentence, but I can kind of read it. Like, this was from like the 400-word sentence, which is a Harrison Frost voice thing. Like, if Harrison's narrating something, we're definitely going to get a 400-word sentence somewhere. This is like the second or third one. So this is it. Jeremiah somewhere above Harrison, or maybe below him, or maybe they were both levitating and it was dark out, but also so bright, and the sky burst like pomegranate seeds, and Jeremiah kept uttering his closing words, and his hands were everywhere but also nowhere. And it was such an equation, the way one equaled the other, and it was so factually perfect. I'll just kind of leave it there. But you can tell from that line, Jeremiah is a perfect man. Like, to Harrison, he is exactly what Harrison needs. He's emotionally stable. He's very nice to him. They both click. They love each other. They have so much. They have so much in common. They both like karaoke. They both like dancing. They are both sociable. They get along really well. But they're also deeply invested in each other. It should be the perfect relationship. But that's not what Harrison wants. So in Feeding Habits, he says that line. Everything was so factually perfect. Like, he should have just said yes to this. And I wanted to embody that, because now obviously Feeding Habits would have happened after Body Back. I wanted to sort of embody what it was like to admit something being factually perfect, but like in narrative. Does that make any sense? I don't know if I'm making any sense. So here is that excerpt. So this is Harrison imagining a road trip where he and Jeremiah, who currently they both live in Las Vegas, if they drove back to Maryland, because Jeremiah's from Baltimore. He could take the first leg of the trip, tune the radio to throwbacks, belt Bon Jovi's Livin' on a Prayer, and a Burger King drive-thru just to make Jeremiah laugh. They could rest at a motel similar to Greta, the same stuffy wallpaper, the same Berber carpet, surprise each other the next morning with bagels from the bakery a block away, go crabbing at Point Lookout on their first weekend in the state, pose next to each other with their catch for a photo snapped by a stranger. Jeremiah might even invite him to his grandmother's birthday party, introduce him to an aunt as his boyfriend. They'd link arms the entire night, feed each other spoons of sherry trifle. Harrison could bond with a cousin over their shared interests in bushcraft forts and neo-dada art. Jeremiah's mother would invite them berry picking the next weekend, serve blueberry buckle after Sunday mass, everyone still suited and skirted around the kitchen table. Harrison could cameo in their Christmas card photo, spend the next year's Labor Day weekend at a lakeside cottage, grilled chicken thighs with Jeremiah's father, play Marco Polo with his younger brother. It'd all feel like an airy vacation. I love this excerpt because it's very Maryland, which was important to me. I mentioned a couple of things. Bushcraft forts, the interest in bushcraft forts is it's an Easter egg, actually, a Harrison Easter egg. My sister and I were writing this book called Of the Red Earth together. We were just doing it for fun, and actually it ended up becoming more of her project. She wrote a good chunk of it, but it was basically a rewrite of the original Book of Fostered. I haven't really talked about it that much on here, just because I didn't really do much. Sarah really did the heavy lifting on that one. She gave Harrison a bushcraft fort in Of the Red Earth, so I was like, he lives in the woods in a bushcraft fort in Of the Red Earth, and he's much younger in that book. I think he's like 17 or 18 in that book. Maybe I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe he's 20, I don't know. And then I had the neo-dada art thing. I just mentioned that because I took an art class, art history class, and it was like one of the only things that like I really remember from my degree. Like I literally just took that class and I was like, I gotta put that in there. And also Harrison is really into art. He's an artist, which has always seemed very out of character for me, but he's been canonically an artist since 2014, like since the original book. Like he was drawing like from the beginning of time, which is weird because he doesn't seem like an artist to me, but whatever. I mean, like, what's an artist? Like, he deserves to draw. Let the man draw, you know? I also think that, like, he would be interested in, like, art history and, like, going to art galleries and stuff like that. Okay, so that was an interesting part of his personality to explore. I haven't really, you know, thought about that all that much. So then here is another excerpt. This is a kind of an interesting excerpt. We got some Harrison childhood. Now, you know, the backstory of Fostered is that it was a YA dystopian book, and Fostered is the series in which, you know, Mothwork is a spin-off of, and, you know, Body Back comes from Mothwork. I mean, if you watch the video, you would know what I'm saying. We didn't really, I don't know Harrison's backstory. Like, if it was like a normal backstory, because his backstory originally is that like he's in a dystopia, you know, but like he's not a dystopia anymore. So I was able to brainstorm kind of a new backstory for him, and that was really interesting to me. So here he meets a boy named Valentine who is a classmate of his, and I guess they kind of live close to each other. He runs into Valentine and he ends up spending the day with Valentine while Harrison's father, who sucks as a person, has left him. Harrison's like 15, 14, I don't know. And his dad's left him for a week or something to like go fishing or whatever. So he's just got the house to himself. So bored one day, he goes and he runs into Valentine. They spend the day together. Then they go back to Harrison's house to hang out, and his dad's there. And so we got a little bit of that. It didn't seem possible then how Harrison had invited Valentine back to his house, both aware his father had been gone that day, and the day before, both sweaty, doe-eyed, panting, young. How they should have walked past Gingerbread House in Bay Ridge on the long way home, chatted about who they were backing in the '98 NBA Finals. How Harrison knew there was a half-eaten packet of Schneider's hot dogs in the fridge he could doctor into something more substantial with a single TV dinner in the freezer. How, as they approached his house, he didn't even need to see his father's pickup to know he was there. From 20 feet away, he heard the radio, the Sean Hannity show. He should have run. Everything buzzed inside him, too. And he could have scooped Valentine's hand within his own and sprinted down the sweltering sidewalk until the sun went down. They could have gone anywhere, hitchhiked all the way to East Indiana or West Texas. They could have spent the rest of their teenage years eyelash to eyelash, sour-mouthed and in love on Sunday mornings. Instead, he told Valentine to go. We don't really know much about... I don't know much about Harrison under the age of 17 because I only started writing with him at 17. So it was interesting to think about him as like a younger teenager who... I mean, I think Harrison would have been canonically, if Body Back takes place in 2005, I believe he would have been born in 1983 for the literary fiction books. That it's more complicated with the dystopian books, which obviously take place in the future. So he's almost 22. So yeah, he would have been born in 1983. So, you know, backing the 98 NBA Finals. Something I'm really bad at, I will say, is, and I feel quite dumb about, like, I want to make a separate video on this because I was going to talk about it here. I just don't think we have enough time, but I feel really dumb sometimes when it comes to writing. Like, I'm not good at research. I don't understand things very well. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not good with directions and, like, streets and stuff like that. So like I see writers like are able to capture a sense of place, and I can capture a sense of place that's vague that I'm making up, but I can't capture an actual sense of place. So I was trying to do some Brooklyn stuff here, but I don't even know if I did any of it right. So if you're a Brooklyn native and you're like, what the fuck is happening, let me know. Actually, I would use your expertise. But I think it's interesting, like my sister loves NBA, so I added the little NBA, the 98 NBA Finals, because it would have been around this time, that the exact time that the finals were happening. So little things like that to sort of set the book a little bit more, but I really struggle honestly with setting. But I want to talk about some of the Easter eggs here. The one Easter egg that I think is interesting, they could have gone anywhere, hitchhiked all the way to East Indiana or West Texas. I have been doing Grace and Chance Easter eggs all throughout this book because I'm not publishing this, and I love Grace and Chance's music. Grace and Chance saved my life in like miserable March is what we can call it. And so I was like, let me, like, because, you know, poet in me, I'm like, let me homage something. So I've been dropping either like kind of like not full song lyrics, but like elements of the song lyrics into some of the, like if it's like an adjective or something from the song lyrics, and then sometimes song names, or like little phrases that are kind of like based off of song lyrics. Anyway, so the West Texas bit is what I'm saying is a Grayson Chance reference because he has a song called West Texas. This is from Harry's Son, which is the last chapter. Anything that mentions Harrison's dad or seems like daddy issues goes to Harry's Son, because Harry's Son is the father chapter, because Harrison, the name means son of Harry, and Harrison, or I guess me, but mostly Harrison, I think, kind of shortens that to Harry's Son. Anyways, so this is one where he does some bad things, and I don't want to talk about the bad things because I have teenagers watching me. So we'll just say that he did some things and took some things that he was not supposed to, and he is very inebriated. He ends up meeting this dude, and I don't condone anything that he's been doing, by the way. He ends up meeting this dude that at this party. He ends up stumbling at another party. Like, oh God, Harrison at another party. That's bad. He ends up at a party, and this guy he talks to, he's an older guy, and Harrison's like, let's be into each other, etc. And the guy's like, are you good? Like, you seem really out of it. You seem like you need your mom. Are you okay? And Harrison's really taken aback by, like, what? Like, I'm really cool. What are you talking about? Like, Riz. He thinks that he's all that, and he's not. He looks like a child. So the guy is talking to him here. And this is after the Valentine memory. The man steps forward. Harrison recoils even though no one has touched him. Some partygoers have entered the kitchen now, all congregating around the punch bowl like Harrison had. The bang of music from outside follows them as they chatter, and the noise is like an ice pick to the brain. And Harrison wants to tell them all to leave. Harrison wants to bolt from the city. Harrison wants to be someone else's son for a day, just to see if that might fix him. Who shamed you? Asks the man. Harrison inhales, aware he feels like a deer just about to be shot. He glances at the others here with them, their golf ball eyes, their pearl necklaces, then glances at the door. He can't look at the man again. If wisdom is a weapon, Harrison's a prey animal, so gullible, death a requirement of his life. The man opens his mouth again. He runs. This is, I think, the direct continuation from that, where he's running and running and running away and thinking about this phrase, who shamed you? Because shame is a really interesting question in Body Back. And I was wondering, like, how does shame manifest for Harrison? Because honestly, he's like really ashamed. He's ashamed of himself because he let himself, like, and he feels this way. Like, I'm not saying that it's right, but he feels that he let himself stay in a relationship that wasn't good for him. He feels that he let himself leave a relationship that he wanted to stay in. It's the same relationship. So has like, you know, this dialectical tension that's chasing him in this book. And then he feels ashamed because he can't face Lonan, even though he wants to. He's ashamed because he thinks he's a lot better than he is, and he knows that he's not as good as he is. He also is ashamed because he knows that he's not worth it. Anyway, so I wanted to think about that question a little bit more. I didn't think about Harrison and shame until that question, who shamed you, came up, because earlier Harrison says to the guy, you're ashamed, man. And the guy's like, no, you, like, you're looking in a mirror, like, you're projecting, basically. And so here's that paragraph. Harrison doesn't need a god so much as he needs a way out. He parts glittering people with his elbows, his heart a pendulum ticking. He needs an exit sign bleeding in neon letters. He needs to cab back to Brooklyn, not to find his father, but to hide. He needs to go back to Eliza's apartment and sit in the parking lot for hours until someone, anyone, a shadow of a man with cold hands, a phantom who sins as much as he prays, comes out. It doesn't matter who he nudges. If one is a woman who looks vaguely like Bu, if she curses when he shoves her out of the way, if one is a man with a shiny upper lip who says Harrison's kind of cute and would he like to kiss him. He's no Jacob fleeing Laban. He's just a man trapped in a party, his vision pooling pink, orange, neon green. Who shamed you? He hates the shape of that question. His mother is disappointed in him, his father too. This is their white flag. A failure with Jeremiah, a failure at this party, a failure in sonhood. As he moves, that question bleats. Down a set of stairs. Who shamed you? Back up to. Who shamed you? So yeah, it's interesting. Parental shame too. Does he feel ashamed as a son? I think he does, because he's always felt like he shouldn't be a son, because his mom didn't even want to be in his life, or didn't want to be. It's complicated, but to him didn't want to be in his life from like ages 7 to now, basically, when he stumbled back into her life. So basically forever, she didn't really want him as a son anymore. That's how it appears to him. His father definitely didn't want him as a son. And so I think he's feeling a lot of shame for a lot of things that are out of his control. And so he's experiencing a lot of pain, and it sucks, I think. And I really like these paragraphs. They suck though. Oh my god. They ouch. Oh my gosh. Harrison doesn't need a god so much as he needs a way out is a take on the first line of Body Back, such as Harrison doesn't need a god, I think, is the full line. Which, Easter egg, is a line that I stole from Seventh Virtue. One of the last lines in Seventh Virtue, like one of the last first lines of a scene in Seventh Virtue is, Harrison doesn't need a god so much as he needs someone to save him. I stole that line when I was writing Body Back. I stole it from Seventh Virtue and I put it into Body Back. So now it's appeared 3 times. Reduce, reuse, recycle, sustainable writing practices, everybody. All right. Here's another one. Is a bit, it's ouchy. It's ouchy. Okay. Harrison gapes, unable to escape. Someone tells him to watch where he's going. Someone grabs him by the throat. Someone helps him up the stairs and someone else kicks him back down. Someone reads his fortune on a daybed, tells him he's been dead since yesterday. Someone holds his face and says he's the most gutless person they've ever met. He's going to die here. He's already dead. He'd like to die in the starlight. He'd like to take his last breath to the pulse of Take On Me. He's crying. When he splits a joint with someone on the roof, he's naked but so close he could suffocate. He's under the earth. He's hovering above it. He's lost in a glut of bodies. No one is here. Someone could be. He screams for a mother, mourns a father, chooses nails on the landing, begs for forgiveness with his eyes wide open. Which, now that I think of it, is really similar to the last line of this book, which I could keep. I wrote this first, so I just subconsciously plagiarized myself. I could keep it and just say it's patterning. Okay. And here's Harrison again, except this one's really sad because it's the Jeremiah goodbye. So instead of being normal, because he's like really out of it, but not just because of that, but because like he's not really a great person in this book. He doesn't make it a good goodbye, and he has to break my heart. Okay. His eyes swerve like Halley's Comet. He's not the man he once was. No Christ, no Jacob, no Jeremiah, but something much worse. He's sprouting something evil, his face glitching right ahead of him. Panic lurches up his throat, and he reaches for himself to say he's fine. Someone's here for him. Someone loves him. Nothing's going to make him vanish here. He's here. He's happy. He's going to be. He's worthy of gentleness. He's really not. He's got an ugly smile. He's nobody here. He's losing himself. He's better than ever. He's dismantling no matter how hard he tries to keep himself together. Rhyme bars. Okay, sorry. He's wearing another man's earring because he's over him. He's not. He's never going to love someone else again. He's in chrysalis. He's in autopsy. He's got someone else's nose, eyes, hair. He's resurrecting badly. He's turning blue and nothing can stop him. He's Jesus when he wants to be and Lonan right now. That paragraph is really funny because it's basically a poem. I was writing it like how I would write a poem because he's not there. Like, if you're catching my drift, he's high. Okay. I didn't want it to make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be overwhelming. And I'm not sure if I like it, but I think it's actually really fun to read out loud. Apologies. This is the Jeremiah goodbye. That was just a random paragraph. This is the Jeremiah goodbye, but this is like really close to that other excerpt. Listen to me, Harrison says, gripping Jeremiah's cheek harder when his eyes widen at the blood dripping down his knuckles and the specks of glass that glitters off them like rhinestones. Are you listening? JJ comes the voice as a car door slams. This is BU, but we don't know that in the narrative. Jeremiah's jaw trembles. He shouldn't be here. He shouldn't suffer. I'm here. You're a good person, Harrison says. He drags his fingers down to Jeremiah's mouth, digs miniature ships into his bottom lip. In another life, he could have gone anywhere with this man. A private tour of a glass museum, Griffith Park, a supermarket cereal aisle, Bora Bora, the fabric softened sheets of his double bed. I love you, he says, ignoring the second voice that again suggests they leave. He tries to get onto his elbow to get closer to him, to stare till his eyes tumble out like marbles, to take his chin and say, I find the best parts of me in you. But the farthest he gets is a weak buck of his chin. I love you, I love you. JJ, we need to go. And Jeremiah's staring right at him. He's never seen his eyes like this before, so focused it's like they've pressurized and could crack like amber at any moment. He looks like he wants to say something. Harrison, stay with me. Harrison, you're not your past. Harrison, you're surviving. Instead, he shakes his head then starts to rise. Harrison snatches his grip so tight his hands shake. Believe me, he says. His chest is airy. He's dying. He's dead, falling from a great height. He smooths a hand up Jeremiah's eyebrows. Beautiful man, a living picture in his own right. Jeremiah glances at his arm wound by Harrison's fingers, and when he looks back up, his eyes are shimmering. Why did you go? He asks. And why had he? He could have spent forever against Jeremiah's ribs, built a future with him over spiked lemonade and foolish nights at karaoke bars. Jeremiah is built for movement, late nights, orange sorbet mornings, moonlit swan paddle boats, a thrilling midlife career change, dinner parties with near strangers, weekend hikes of Yosemite, bustling hostels in Amsterdam, desserts with almond liqueur and creme fraiche, sunsets in Montego Bay. You're bad for me, Harrison slurs. Why? Why was that what you had to say for him when that's not true at all? Like, that is not what you didn't have to tell him. You did not have to say you're bad for me because he's not bad for you. What you meant is I'm bad for you, but he said it wrong. Or did he? I don't know. There are a couple of Easter eggs, I think, throughout here. Glass Museum is in feeding habits. I just put it back in here. Harrison, stay with me. Harrison, you're not your past. Harrison, you're surviving. If you watch my other videos, the webcam videos, I shared an excerpt where Harrison does this, but for Jeremiah. Jeremiah, he was like, Jeremiah, you're blah, 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 Jeremiah, you're blah, blah. And I thought it would be interesting to reverse it and have Jeremiah say it about Harrison. Technically, this is Harrison's point of view. So he's saying it to himself. Harrison, stay with me. He's telling himself, Harrison, you're not your past. Harrison, you're surviving. Yeah, it's real hurty. All right. Last excerpt for Body Back, which means this is the last time I'm going to talk about it before I do an all about my novel. And I might do like what I learned from writing my novella, or like what writing my 13th book taught me. But 13 things writing my 13th book taught me. I still haven't done the one for Seventh Virtue though, so I might not talk about this project for a while. Harrison ends up at a church and is about to interrupt the congregation by being a little embarrassing, but it's okay. He deserves to cry. It's been a long book. He arrives at church 5 minutes before mass starts. He finds a seat at the back, right behind a family of 4 in collective prayer. The morning is ripe with sun, flares skittering across the congregation. Ahead, Mary and baby Jesus look down from a stained glass pane on the east wall. The choir flips through their hymn books. A few rows up, tweens play chopsticks with jittering hands. I put that detail in there because that's what I used to do with my brother at church. Sorry. Is anyone sitting here? Harrison looks up. A woman stands with her toddler beside her. He wears khakis and a cable-knit sweater. A Spider-Man action figure sticks out from his sleeve. Harrison stares. This mother got her son out of the house before 9 in the morning. The last time Harrison spoke to his own mother feels like 4 lifetimes ago. Do you mind? The woman asks, and when he still doesn't respond, she shuffles in on the pew and sits next to him anyway. The choir's pianist plays an arpeggio, and 4 bars later, singers harmonize to Here I Am, Lord, which is a hymn that I used to hear a lot growing up when I used to be a Catholic. The crowd goes mild, focused forward as the processional begins. Harrison looks to Jesus crucified behind the altar. In his last moment, he gave himself to his father. Harrison will never see his father again. Their mothers have been left to weep, and yet they're both sons, no matter what they've done. Jesus parallels were not really intended in Body Back, but like, Harrison kept doing them, so I was like, okay. And then this is the final excerpt, actually. I keep lying and saying this is the final one. This is the final excerpt. This is the last couple paragraphs of the book. I just wrote this. I haven't edited it, so... And same with the last one. Bear with me. In August, leaving Lonan was an inevitability as much as it was a new beginning. Now he knows he's not going anywhere. After this, he'll go back to Susanna, who will greet him with a plate of pappage, twirl his hair while he cries in her lap on the couch. They'll buy tilapia on sale at the grocery store tomorrow, adopt a betta fish, wince at the normalized hypocrisy. He won't think about Lonan, what he's doing in that apartment. If he remembers what it's like to hold someone's hands like they're your own, what it's like to mistake someone else's reflection as yours. He'll never speak to Jeremiah again out of courtesy, write him a postcard from a Grand Canyon gift shop when he and Susanna visit like typical mothers and sons, but never send it. He can manage in his forever and ever, amen, because he's okay. This horribly pleasant, horribly easy life will be okay. The choir asks who will bear their light, offers themselves to God just as Jesus did. Harrison gasps. Once, he might have convinced himself he could be like them, someone so committed they'd do anything for the person they love. He'd done that before, given everything in him to a man, even if it almost killed him. Now he doesn't know who he is, where he went. Jesus in the tomb, body gone, body gone. He's missed his chances at glory. When the choir swells, their voices clattering off the domed ceiling, he laughs. He doesn't mean to, but there he is, virtually alone, despite the passionate churchgoers around him. He's no Christ, no Jacob, no Jeremiah, no Lonan. He'll never be, even if he wanted to. Tears flail down his face. He laughs again, though halfway it becomes a sob. The woman from earlier glances at him funnily, but it doesn't matter. He's not going to heaven. He's never going to see Jeremiah again. The choir's heard their calling, but Harrison won't ever have one. He laughs with his eyes straight on the crucifix. People from other pews begin to turn around, puzzled, even the priest looking up from the altar. The church silences eventually. No one claps. All eyes turn to him. He weeps with his mouth wide open. Which is the last sentence, and really the exact same as the previous sentence, but it's going to stay that way. Patterning. Yeah, this one's really sad. There are a couple of, like, body back Easter eggs, which were from previously in the book, that you might catch if you've been following my, like, writing updates on Tumblr. One of them is, like, in his forever and ever, amen, because he's okay. Earlier in the book, he makes fun of the man because he's living a forever and ever, amen. Now here he is living his forever and ever, amen. Then the horribly pleasant, horribly easy life. There was that whole easy paragraph. I've read it a couple times on this channel about his life. He's not happy with it because it's so easy. Now he doesn't know who he is, where he went. Jesus in the tomb, body gone, body gone. That is from 24 Karat Harrison. I'll link the writing updates. You can read all of them if you would like to learn more about this project. That is a reference to that. There's a paragraph where Harrison talks about Jesus in the tomb and then goes body gone, body gone. So that's how Body Back ends. It ends as an L. Sorry. Speaking of L, let's briefly talk about Lonan, because I am writing a new project. It's called Hallowed Bodies. I haven't actually started drafting it besides what I'm going to read to you today. It's going to be very religion centric, obviously from the title, but more so than Body Back, like not in a blasphemous way, not necessarily, but in like I'm an ex-Catholic way, because Lonan's an ex-Catholic just like me. So it really informs that. I don't really know much about Hallowed Bodies. It's not as clear to me in terms of what Lonan's going to do. It's going to be, I do know he's going to have some like explorations of gender. He's going to hopefully explore his sexuality in a bit more of a safe way. If you don't know a lot about Lonan, that has not been a thing for him. He has a lot of internalized homophobia and struggles a lot with accepting that about himself. I'm hoping this can be a breath of fresh air for him, a bit of like a beautiful moment for him. I hope it's not a struggle book. So this is the opening of Hallowed Bodies. I wrote this in April. It feels like I just wrote it though, which is so weird. Okay. Lonan doesn't pray anymore, at least not the way he used to. As a child, he and his father prayed everywhere, begging for forgiveness at Crater Lake, repenting in line for an oil change, supplicating in a windstorm. On Sundays, they'd wake before dawn and nestle in front of the bathroom mirror, recite the first chapter of Genesis, Paul's letters to Timothy, Psalm 22. Lonan preferred the Apostles' Creed. He'd watch his young mouth repeat, "I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord." And he did believe. After hours of this, sunlight misting the open window, Mass a half hour away, their lips would be so numb they'd have to pinch them back to life. Father going pinch, then son going pinch, father, son, both of them bloody-mouthed and ready, at last, for God. Lonan, the truth is, Lonan believes in nothing now. He's as fatherless as he is motherless, as he is godless. This should be a good thing, but bowed against a pew, the church around him hollow like Jesus' empty tomb, his eyes trained on the dangling crucifix ahead of him. He's certain this is wrong. He needs a mentor, a shepherd, an idol. He needs someone to follow, which, if you didn't catch that, the ending of Body Back mirrors the beginning of Hallowed Bodies. And if you didn't catch, I might have said this before, Hallowed Bodies is Lonan's version of Body Back. So Harrison got Body Back and now he's going to have Hallowed Bodies. And so Body Back is the book that comes after Mothwork, and then Hallowed Bodies is the book that comes before Feeding Habits. And I think that makes a lot of sense because in a lot of ways, for me, at least in the beginning, Mothwork felt like Harrison's book. Feeding Habits feels a little bit more like Lonan's book, even though it's mostly Harrison's book. But anyway, so it makes sense that that's kind of the way like it kind of progressed into itself. But the whole shepherd thing, like he needs someone to follow, I had no idea that I had reused that. So I wrote this opening of Hallowed Bodies first, obviously. I forgot all about it. I haven't reread it. And I accidentally mirrored it in the end of Body Back, which I think is lovely. And, you know, I think they have a solution to their problem. If they just spoke to each other, they're both looking for somebody to follow. They can just follow each other. But no, they don't like communication. So this is going to be a really fun project. I think I'm really looking forward to writing it. It's not going to be nearly as long, I hope. I'm hoping it doesn't take me as long to write, but I also don't want to put a time pressure on me. I know a lot of the reason why I only ever put, and I want you guys to know this, the only ever reason I've only ever put like deadlines, like harder deadlines on my work, you know, if it's not for publication, is because I feel like I'm running out of time. And so like I want to write things fast so that I can write everything. I know a lot of writers have that fear. I never used to, and I guess I have that fear now. So just want to be transparent about you. I don't think that writing slow is a bad thing at all. I think you should take your time. It's totally okay. I know that it's hypocritical because I can't take my own advice, but I'm working on it. Okay. Before we leave this, why don't we talk about Seventh Virtue 2? Because yeah, Seventh Virtue has a sequel. I haven't revealed the title officially on YouTube, so I'm not going to reveal it here. It's just going to be called SV2 for now. But actually the initials are called SG, so we can call it SG. While I was procrastinating finishing Body Back, I wrote the opening of SG, and I think that's really funny. And I just wanted to read it because it starts in Reeve's point of view. Now, I love Reeve and I miss writing with her. Like, it's not that I'm forgetting how to write with her, but you guys got to remember that before I started writing with Reeve, or again in Seventh Virtue, which I started consistently writing in her point of view in Seventh Virtue in about November, I hadn't written in her point of view in 4 years. So, or like 3 to 4 years. So I got something in my eye. If my eye looks funky, something flew into my eye. I feel like I'm forgetting writing with her because it's been like a couple of months. So it was nice to be back in her head. So this is hopefully the opening of SG. No promises, but hopefully. The rabbit dies 2 days before the storm. A year ago, Reeve would have blamed herself. Stupid, she might have said, reckless, unable to keep anything alive except for herself. Now she stares at the carcass like it's a new violet bloom, like it's a cloud shifting from chihuahua to lipstick bullet to tadpole. Something so normal in nature. Ignore my eye. I think I have now gotten sunscreen in it, so we're just going to ignore. The rabbit appeared on the property 3 weeks ago. Darren had warned her not to interact with it out of fear it might be feral, which made her laugh because it was a rabbit. What harm could it do? Most of the time, she tossed it scraps from fresh vegetables when she could. Carrot tops, potato skins. That's all I got in Ray's point of view, but I'm really excited to write with her. It's going to be, I'm hoping, my summer project after I do Hallowed Bodies. Hallowed Bodies, I don't know if I'm like in the mood necessarily to write it because I've really been in literary fiction mode, and I find that if I stick too much to like really serious writing, like I can start feeling like really insecure. I don't know, maybe because it takes me longer. I don't know what it is. So I might kind of switch between, I used to do that. I used to write 2 at 1. I don't know. We'll see. But Reeve will kind of be in Hallowed Bodies anyway, because a big part of Lonan's goals is to find his sister. And their siblings, obviously. So anyway, my eye is like, I don't think anybody wants to look at this anymore. So I'm going to sign off. Over an hour long video. Apologies. But anyway, I will see you guys in another one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you're working on. Okay, I gotta go. Okay, bye.